What is too private to share online? What might build a relationship with your social media followers, but might make you regret it later? We spoke with financial expert Tori Dunlap, host of Financial Feminist and founder of HerFirst100k. She has over 5 million social media followers and has great advice on this. Meet Kim Rickberg, a 6-time award-winning marketer dedicated to helping you become a thought leader through video to get more leads and make more money. Why is she talking about herself in the third person? Not entirely sure. Tori, thank you so much for being with us. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to jump right in. You have built this incredible brand which teaches millions of people, and I'd love to know, how do you decide what's too personal to share? What's the right level of personal? Like, what's your filter? How do you decide that?
Yeah, this is something that I've thought a lot about, that I get a lot of questions about. We have a community of about 5 million social media followers across TikTok and Instagram and our newsletter and our Facebook page. And it's great because we get to connect with a lot of people and get to talk to a lot of people, and it's also terrible because everybody has access to you all the time and all of the opinions and the feedback. And so one of the things that is murky when you do start growing a following is, we were talking about this right before we jumped on, but like, authenticity is so important on social media. Being, the version of you that, feels right and feels authentic, but also understanding that you are talking to people who have never met you, who have no idea what's going on really in your life, and deciding where to let them in can be really tricky. So it really depends on the person, depends on what kind of content you're sharing. I talk about money for a living. I'm going to be pretty open about my money. I'm going to say I'm a multimillionaire. I'm going to say that unabashedly. That's, you Google me and that's the first thing that pops up. Other people might not be so transparent about that. Um, the kind of barometer I found is, and I've heard, psychologists talk about this. You sometimes only discover there's a boundary because you accidentally cross it and you realize, oh, there was a boundary there, right? You do something and it feels kind of gross, or it feels weird, or it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit right for you. And then you go, oh, okay, that is a boundary that I have. For instance, I have been with my partner for about 2 years now. And I used to share a lot more openly about my dating life and who I was dating. And I decided, once I became a bigger public person, someone who's, gets recognized on the street and is doing all these interviews and shows up online, like, that's not a part of my life I wanted to share, especially since he is a civilian. He is not an entrepreneur. He doesn't do any of social media. And so that was a boundary that I set, because in my previous relationship, I had shared it. And then when that relationship ended, it was very difficult for me when people were asking, hey, where's this person? What's going on with you? And I'm like, I am grieving a breakup. I don't want to talk about this. So that's one instance where, for me, that's, people know I have a partner. I say partner, but I don't talk about who this person is, what they do for a living. I don't show their face. And so, yeah, I think sometimes you only realize there's a boundary there because something doesn't feel right. And you have to then establish, oh, that's not something I'm going to do again.
I love that. The boundary is, don't talk about people who might not be there in the future. It'll be awkward. Just kidding. um, can you give me an example of a recent post? So I love that example about the boyfriend slash ex-boyfriend. Has there been some posts where you were like actively running through your filter, like recently, where you're like, should I post this? Should I not? Is it an overshare? Or this is something I also get sometimes, like, would someone recognize themselves in this story? That's what I get sometimes from people. They're like, you want to share client wins, and they're like, are they going to see themselves in this story? So how do you put things through like that of, will people recognize it, or is it too personal and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like financial conversations, they're really difficult to have, but they're really necessary. I've had conversations with my parents, who are very private people. I get a lot of requests from community members of like, I would love to have your parents be interviewed on your podcast. And I remember 3 years ago, I brought that up with them, and they were like, no, there's no world in which we're doing that. And I was like, okay. So that's one where, like, if I am going to post about them, if they're coming to an event with me, I try to clear that with them. And
Yeah.
sometimes even, I push it. They don't have social media, and sometimes I push it probably where they're comfortable, past where they're comfortable, because I'm like, it's fine, it's fine. I'm trying to think of any other instances. Oh, I don't even want to talk about it because I want to keep it to myself. But I was a theater major growing up. I did, arts and performance, and it's something I haven't done since I graduated college with a theater degree, and I miss it very much. And so I actually promised myself that I was going to do something just for me this year that was artistic, and I wasn't going to talk about it on social media. And I can't tell you how difficult that has been to be like, nope, we're just doing this for me. We're not going to perform it online. We're not going to talk about it, even though it would be great content and I know it would go viral and I know it would do really well. I'm just like, you know what? Nope, you made this promise for you. And I actually did that on purpose because I knew it would be challenging for me. I knew, as someone, who's an entrepreneur and has spent so much of her time building a business, really building content and building a following, it's just like, nah, okay, we're just going to keep this to ourselves.
But by the way, I talk a lot about balance on my podcast for entrepreneurs. I think I really commend you on that because one of the promises I made to myself, I used to do art a lot when I was younger,
Yeah.
and I've committed I have to do something tactile and
Mm,
making art like once every 6 months. If I'm good, once a quarter, but like really once every 6 months
yeah.
just for me. And it's the same thing. It's not like it's just something that just feeds my soul, but I think it's super important as
Yep.
people strive to build a business but still live a life. So I love that. And about the personal thing, my kids, someone saw me on the street and someone's like, "Oh, your trip to Colombia looked awesome." And my little six
Right.
and a half son goes, How'd she know about Colombia? And I said,
Right.
"Oh, I posted it." And he's like, "Was I in the pictures?" And I said, "If
Mm,
you don't want to be in the pictures, you won't be in the pictures."
yeah, totally.
I was like, to that point. Okay. Uh, so I got this recently. I think this is a perfect question for you, actually. So a lot of times you have these business owner communities, and they talk about growing their wealth, growing their business,
Sure.
but it's a part of their marketing. What are your thoughts on sharing financials? But when you're a business person, you're sharing your financials, you're sort of sharing it with your clients too, who invested in
Yeah.
you. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually literally just got off an episode recording of my own podcast called Financial Feminist with Hannah Williams, who runs Salary Transparent Street, and she interviews people and asks their salary on man on the street type interviews. And one of the things we were talking about is like, yeah, you get to a certain level where pay transparency is really important, but it can almost bite you in the ass at some point. And so, I am transparent in saying I'm a multimillionaire, but I literally used to like blur out the numbers, but share screenshots of my bank account. Like when I first started HerFirst100k back in, when it really took off in 2019, like I was sharing my journey to save 100k and I was sharing screenshots and like, I don't do that shit anymore. And I don't do it because we live in a system and a society where we applaud men for the pursuit of wealth and we actively punish women. So if you are a business owner who is doing good money, what happens is, when men go on Instagram and they talk about their Rolex or they talk about, oh, I made 500k drop shipping, the comments are like, oh my God, you must be doing well for yourself, bro. Like, that's so cool. How do I do it? And, if a woman does something similar, it is, you should be just doing this for free because why would you charge it if you really cared about it? Or that must be your husband or your daddy's money, or why aren't you donating more? It's rich people like you that the problem with society. So I do feel like you get to a certain level where even for me, my whole platform is on talk about money, talk about money, talk about how much you're getting paid. And the very system I'm trying to change still affects me, which is like the sexism of talking about money and the difference in how we treat, male business owners versus female business owners.
That's so interesting because it was something like I was asked recently. I was giving a testimonial for my business financial coach who's helped me so much in my business.
Yeah.
She's like, "Would you say how much you're making?" I'm like,
Right.
"No." And I'm like,
Mm,
"No." And I like and one of the things I speak about a lot, like I speak at conferences and stuff, and like
yep.
I'm a big advocate of I call it bragging, but it could be self-advocacy. But I
Yeah.
think women especially just don't brag enough and they don't advocate enough. And I
No, because we
remember
punish women who do. Like that's what happens. And so, no, speaking of like, boundaries or like brand values, like that was something that from very early on, and my team knows this of like in our content, we are unabashedly pursuing money. And it's not because, we want to be billionaires and we want to exploit people. It's because when I have money, I have options. Like the
Mm.
pursuit of wealth is not wrong, but it's only wrong for women. And so if I can unabashedly pursue wealth, if I can lead by example, that's the feeling I want for every single woman, is money giving you the options and the choices and the flexibility for your life. So that's for me the version of transparency, which is like, no, I'm going to charge for my work and you're going to be upset about it sometimes. And there's nothing I can do. Those are not my people. Those are not the people who understand what we're trying to do here. And it would be very hypocritical of me, right, to feel ashamed for charging my worth for taking free labor or doing free labor. And so I think that, yeah, again, we exist in a system, and this is, the entire thesis of my book, Financial Feminist, is that we exist in a system that applauds men talking about money, earning money, getting more money, and we actively keep women playing small from the pursuit of wealth, from investing, from talking openly about money, because money means power, and systemically, society doesn't want women to have power.
Yeah. No, I mean, I totally agree with you. And I think it's just like, it's very interesting because one of the things that keeps coming up, because I do a lot of workshops and I do a lot of speeches and stuff specifically about like bringing forth your accomplishments, which I think
Yeah.
is very parallel to talking about and being
Yep.
open about success and ambition. I will never forget, I was leading a 17-person team at Us Weekly. Like I launched their video unit and I
Mm,
was leading a 17-person team, like doing great, like early video executive, great. And some vendor came in and asked for feedback on their product. I gave him like a 4-page
mm,
sheet with all these notes and I took him through it. And he was like, "So what's your role in the video unit?" And I was like, and I was kind of young, young. I look
right.
a little young, and I
Right.
have like, long brown hair, whatever.
Yep.
And I'm like, is it not clear to you
Yep.
that I'm the head of this unit? Oh my God. Wow. Okay. And I think it was that moment where I'm like, you know what? I have to let people know. Like, you see, I have awards in my, I'm like,
Yep.
I'm going to tell people I'm an award winning marketer because how would they know that? It's a data point. It's my job to
Yep.
tell them what I've done and how I can help them. But I think it's the same with money, is that like, why should I be afraid or embarrassed
Right.
of the things that I've done? Those are my things. I'm not lying. It's just information, but we put such weight on it in the same way that money has weight on it. And those weights they're societal, they're in our heads, they're in our communities. But
Yep.
like, I just think it's such a parallel of like speaking up, getting what you're worth, asking for what you're worth, not being ashamed of it. And when you get it, when you amass it, not hiding behind it. But I think, to the original point of like, I'm a business owner and people hire me. And I don't necessarily want to say, like, I earned X last year because I don't want people to feel like, did I pay Kim too much or like whatever? You know what I mean? Like, it makes me feel,
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we just have to yeah, I feel the same way, but there is a certain level of, okay, if you are a client of somebody's and you don't want to see them succeed, that for me feels like the concern there. Like, again, there's some people who join our community who are newer and who maybe, I'm transparent about this, and then they're like, "Oh, well, you're charging for your services, and you're making multi-millions off the of charging us." And I'm like, that that's how this works. That's how this works. And also, but there's a certain, I don't mean that in a mean way, but it's just a certain level of like, the community we have understands like, oh, I want to support this woman owned business because I know that one, she's offering really good services, and two, she's passing the wealth along and turning the world into hopefully the kind of
Right.
more equitable place we want to see. um
Right.
yeah, maybe the first part didn't come out right. Like, I have every understanding and respect for somebody who's like, yeah, I don't want to ever exploit somebody. That's just the whole conversation of like, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, right? And not
Yeah.
to get really into it,
Right.
but like, I struggled with this when writing my book because, especially when you're teaching women or anybody how to navigate money, there's a certain, you realize that at a certain point, like, you can't just say budget, right? You can't budget your way out of poverty. So I don't want to win capitalism because it means I've exploited somebody, but I can't lose capitalism either because that means suffering to myself and to my community and to the work that we do. So all of us are just trying to survive capitalism to the best of our ability and to do good work and to compensate, to pay people well and to also get paid well.
Yeah. Amen to that. Okay. You are a business owner and a financial
Yep.
expert. What are the top 3 tips that you would give to another business owner?
Yep. This is so obvious, but I see so many people not do this. If you're not setting aside 30% of your revenue for taxes, we need to do that. We need to set aside money every single time you get paid in something like a high yield savings account that just waits until it's tax time. Yeah, especially newbie business owners. This you're paid differently as a business owner than you're paid in a 9 to 5 W-2 job, right? If you're getting a paycheck at a 9 to 5, the taxes have already been taken out. But if you get paid, let's call it $1,000 as a business owner, you haven't paid any tax on that. And you also have expenses on top of that to think about. So I say, set aside money for taxes, but the like sub tip in that is also charge accordingly. Like price your services knowing that, oh, I got expenses to take out and I have to pay taxes on this money, and $1,000 that I get paid does not mean $1,000 in my pocket. So that's a big one. The second one is you really need to know your numbers. I talk to a lot of creative people who are like, I'm right brained and I'm not really left brained. And I'm like, okay, then you either need to hire someone who's left brained or start knowing your numbers even better. I really view it as a game. And I think that's actually one of the most healthy things we can do is, if it's 5 days from the end of the month, I'm like, how can we make 10K in these next 5 days? Like, that's just fun for me. And that's really, again, the gamification of that. We were talking before about like, seriousness, taking ourselves seriously, but also, okay, it's just really great to know like, yes, I'm a serious business owner, but also this is kind of fun. And then, yeah, know your numbers, track your numbers, know your cash flow, know what's coming in and know what's coming out. And then three, as much as you can predict your numbers, that's going to be really helpful. There's a lot of businesses that are seasonal or for me, a huge chunk of our job is content creation, and so that kind of ebbs and flows, but there is a certain amount of money that I can expect every month. Or January is really big for us because it's like new year, new you time, and everybody wants to get their financial shit together, so we always know that like we're not going to get paid out in January, but February and March typically do really well for us. So that's just something to think about. December is like shit. Nobody wants to think about this right now. Everybody's at home with their families for the holidays. So you can start to, after you've been doing this for a little bit, you can start to predict cash flow, where it's going to come from, and start planning your business accordingly.
This is like the first year I've actually gotten out a calendar and planned out when I'm launching
Yeah.
things, when I'm promoting things, and I'm like, wow, I can actually take vacations and not worry.
Right.
What a shock.
Right. Right.
How crazy is this? Talk to me about that moment where you were like, oh, this isn't a blog. This isn't a side hustle. This is like a real business and it's going to
Yeah.
be this real thing. What was that moment?
I'm going to be honest. I knew that this business had legs even when it was a side hustle and even when it was a blog. That's, again, another thing that I think society does is you talk about your business and people go, oh, your little hobby. And I'm like, no, this is a business. This is an established business. But really, I mean, the kind of like point of takeoff, there's like two big ones. 2019 was me rebranding the business to HerFirst100k. It was like a blog for 20 something women before then. And then I got really focused of, okay, we're going to talk about money and career. So that rebrand plus me hitting my 100K and quitting my job, quit my job in late 2019 after I hit that 100K about 3 weeks after I was on Good Morning America for the first time. Like that was a big pivot for me of like, okay, we're going all in. We're going to see if this has legs. And of course it did. And then 2020 getting on TikTok, like that was a big deal. I think a lot of people were on TikTok early in the pandemic. I was there just as a consumer of content. And then the fifth or sixth video we ever posted went crazy, mega viral, changed our business overnight. And we saw similar kind of viral moments throughout the past couple of years that, there was one in April of 2021. We literally, and this is something I'm so proud of. I love consulting about this. I love talking about this. I teach people how to do this because it was just insane. My background's in marketing. When I say these numbers, like they're nuts. But from one organic TikTok video in April of 2021, we turned that video in a week to 100,000 email subscribers. Like took one video that I filmed off the cuff in no makeup and a sweatshirt, and literally turned that one video into email subscribers that we still talk to this day. No money behind that post. Like it was completely organic. We've never paid a dime for ads actually. And so that's something that was like a huge shift for us, of just, using these platforms at the top of the funnel, but then getting people off the platform. So yeah, there's been a couple of those moments that are just really fun. And again, the gamification of it, of like, oh, okay, great.
I love that. Okay, rapid fire before I lose you.
Sure.
Worst job or weirdest job you've ever had?
Oh, I've had a lot of bad jobs. Oh God, it's like tied between two. Both of them I talk about in my book. The intro to my book is all about me quitting a job without another lined up because it was so toxic after only like 2 or 3 months. And then my first job out of college was a good job, but the culture was horribly toxic. And I met my best friend there, and I'm really thankful I met her. But we still talk about like there should be multiple lawsuits for that company, and maybe there will be someday. Yeah.
Keep an eye on the news.
Yep.
Can you share a funny or embarrassing work moment?
Ooh. Oh. Can we cut this if I take a second to think?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Give me a second because I want to give you a good one. Embarrassing work because I'm sure I've had them. Hmm. Why can't I not think of one off the top of my head? Oh, I would say this is so common, but like anytime I spell somebody's name wrong, I just like I feel awful about it. And then I'm really bitter when somebody spells my name wrong. So it's like it's not fair of me. I understand the hypocrisy there, but no, anytime that I spell somebody's name wrong or say somebody's name wrong, oh, that's actually a big one. Is we record obviously, you know, we've recorded over 150 episodes of my podcast, and every single time when we sit down to record the intro, I'm always like, even if it's, John Smith, I'm always like, oh, am I pronouncing this correctly? Because I'm so scared of butchering somebody's name.
I'm the same way. I'm like, is it Jane Doe? They're like,
Right,
yes.
right,
I'm like,
right,
thank you. Thank you so much.
right.
Last question. Do you feel like you have balance, and what always gets a yes and what always gets a no in your life?
Ooh, I feel like I'm finding it. I feel like I did not have it for the past couple of years. Launching a book, as anybody who's launched a book will tell you, is that if you go all in, like you'll never work harder for less money in your entire life. But yeah, I sacrificed a lot to be able to do that. So I feel like we're just finding that now. Um, I feel like what's always a no is, yeah, any sort of opportunity where you're not going to compensate me. We still get so many, hi, can you do this for exposure? And I'm like, absolutely not. And then a yes for me, I take every Friday off. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but I really try to be good about it. And that's the day I spend with my partner, and started doing that about a year and a half ago. And I look forward to Fridays every single week.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Tori.
Thank you for having me.